Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sex Ed for You podcast, where research meets reality.
This is the podcast for people who want to date and have great sex that is safe, fun, and enjoyable.
We desire to empower our listeners to make informed decisions that lead to values-based living. I am Lauren, and I am a certified holistic sexuality educator and a certified embodied intimacy and relationship coach. That is the first time I've been able to say that because I completed all of the things and I am now officially certified, and there's officially a certificate in a frame. It's not on a wall yet.
But it's in a frame.
But it's in a frame. It's in a frame. It's a big deal.
I'm so excited.
It was a big 80-hour certification, but who are you? Sorry, we'll get back to that.
I'm Holland, and I'm our Chief Culture and Content Coordinator. Let's get back to you. That's far more important.
It's exciting. I don't believe in perpetual school because I believe that it is a hierarchical model that blah, blah, blah. But I do think that sometimes we get in a field and we can feel the tools that we are lacking, that we want more tools for something. And as my work with clients continues to blossom and grow, I was starting to work with a lot of partnerships and polycules and things like this. And I wanted more somatic tools because I could see that there was a lot of this that I knew. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm a nerd. We all know this. But I wanted more embodied tools, and I went to school for it. And it was 80 hours and then 10 hours of work outside, which I did many, many more because I got to use all of these tools with all of the clients. So it was kind of funny putting together my spreadsheet of like, when didn't I use these tools? How many hours? Hundreds. But yeah, and then talking with colleagues outside of it, and then I submitted all of the things, and I'm so thankful. It was really awesome, and more than anything, it also, and this is how I work, connected me to things that I want to continue to know more about. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in holistic sexuality school, I found the Wheel of Consent, which now I've become like a very big student of. Inside of this world, I really stumbled into depth psychology, mm-hmm. and I had already loved the work of Carl Jung and had found it in Jack Moran's erotic mind work, had found it in Esther Perel's work. And now that I've learned even more, I'm like, this definitely is the nuance mm-hmm. that you and I talk about all the time. I just didn't really know as much as I know now. So I can see me just continuing to deep dive, which is fun. And I always love that. I need that in my life. That's what I'm meant to do as a generator, y'all, is feel the fire and follow it. And I love learning. And it's done. I'm kind of sad, but also it was great. I don't know. Like,
I knew you'd be sad.
Sometimes when I'm in it, I'm like, oh my goodness, like another thing to do, but it's not. I love it. I love it so much. It inspires me. So yeah, I'm really, really glad. And it's so funny when I would tell clients I was doing this, they were like, I'm so glad because you're so much of a coach too. Like, right. You're not an educator. And I was like, yeah, but I can't say that. And they were like, oh my God, like, then fine, get a coaching certificate. So now I feel like those of you who I worked with long ago that I would only say I was like a holistic sexuality educator with can now be like,
she's a coach.
You're a coach now too.
We're very proud of you.
Thank you. I feel more resourced. And yeah, thank you. I'm just going to receive it. Yeah, I think there's this interesting line between not feeling like you're enough. Mm-hmm. And so approaching learning with a scarcity mindset and being hungry for something and then feeling a little full.
Like drawn to
mm-hmm.
it. Yeah.
And this program felt like something I was craving. Mm-hmm. And I'm thankful. Yay. So yeah, on that note, while I was away this past weekend, I went up to New York and surprised my sister and saw a good friend. On the train back, which is something Holland and I do when we go together, is we'll ask anonymous questions and we'll answer your questions. And I did this, but I like posted it way too late on my train travel day. And then I never answered your questions. So I asked Holland if it would be fun to answer some questions, maybe make some content from some of the amazing questions folks asked. And what's neat about it when you all ask questions, and please remember that you always can just email Holland at admin@sexedforyou.com or put a question below. Because again, what's neat about it is that we forget some of these things because this is a topic that we discuss ad nauseum all the time. Mm-hmm. We forget that it's taboo.
Yeah.
Ask us how many times we just bring things up in awkward ways.
Accidentally.
All the time. And people are like,
Yeah.
even
This
I
is
was
normal.
with Trey and a friend Sunday night. And we were all talking about things and they kept like, shh. Like, and I was like, that is so funny because there were like other people around us. And I was like, I talk about this all the time. And to me, it is so de-shamed that I like wouldn't be ashamed if someone heard what I was saying.
Not at all. I would hope that it sparked their curiosity.
Yeah. Like I just don't, I feel no shame.
Well, I just don't care anymore.
No.
And shame is self-imposed.
I'm like, I hope they hear and I hope they come up and ask what we're discussing or hear it and get really curious and then start to do some work of their own. Yeah. To me, it just feels so anti-taboo. So the point of matter is it's so good when you all submit questions because it reminds us of things that possibly haven't talked about before, stuff we should make content for on Instagram. It was really good. All of these things were really good. And we were like, oh yeah, I don't think we have talked about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, be good.
Yay.
You want to pick?
I do. I mean, you know me. I want to go in order. So
It is funny, y'all, that that she doesn't tell stories chronologically. And yet, yes, she loves a list. If we are going down bullet points, like in a meeting or something, she does want to go on lists.
Yes.
That is funny about your
I don't
brain.
want to skip around.
Anyway, it's funny.
Well, I think the thing is, this doesn't matter. I was about to go into my own psychology, but we can talk about that later.
I love it.
Okay, so the first question that we received was, why do men value the idea and the construct of virginity, yet also place such value on sexual experience?
Such a good question. Do you have something that just pops into your head? Aside patriarchy with a big eye roll?
Yeah, patriarchy with a big eye roll. I think we could get into porn here.
There you go.
And I think we could get into the idea of ownership.
Yep. Those are exactly the things that came to my head. This is what we could title this section: patriarchy, porn, and possession.
Yeah. The 3 Ps.
Yeah. Oh, I feel like I want to let out an exhale for all people in all bodies who listen to our podcast, because sometimes when we can bring up the 3 Ps, which that is a name that
Just
we just
created
came up.
right now.
That's not something we've
It's going to be
had
a thing
before.
now.
It is. The 3 Ps. Some people have a tendency to just eye roll, like, oh, people like schluffing that off onto those things. Some people can feel very sensitive because those are very sensitive topics. Mm-hmm. Some people can feel tired. Like, why do we still have to talk about this? And so I want to be sensitive and trauma informed to all of those things. I also want to be sensitive to the fact that I think we do have people in male bodies who listen to this podcast, and I'm thankful for you. And when we say patriarchy, big P, we are not coming after the good men. There are good men in this world. And the good men in this world are still harmed by patriarchy.
Yes.
So I think it's important that we talk about it. But I do know that there are voices in this world who try to spin it as, well, people just hate men. I do not hate men. I really don't. And yeah, it's not what this is about. It's not when we reference patriarchy, it's not a man-hating thing.
No.
Nope. Okay, so how do you think patriarchy influences this trope of be a virgin, but also be sexually experienced?
Well, I think it comes down, all of it comes down to the idea of pleasing the partner, pleasing the man in the relationship. From 2 angles. We've got the angle of please them physically. So be good enough to bring them to orgasm, be good enough to keep them faithful within your relationship. And then I think it is also the idea of virginity that quote unquote pleases this quote unquote man. This is no specific man I'm speaking of, but you know, the patriarchal quote unquote like man that I'm speaking of is pleased by the idea that the woman he is sleeping with is his and his alone and has been quote unquote untainted by the world and by another man, that her body and her pleasure belongs to him. It goes back to the idea that women were passed from father to husband, and that the church and the men in their lives had ownership over their sexuality and their body just in general. And then it goes into, the pleasure. So I think it's a multi-angled point of pleasing the man within the relationship.
Yeah. Two things that came to mind while you're talking. One, that idea of if she's untouched, she also can't compare him to anything else. And so it's a way of ensuring that she will stay around, because whether you're a great lover or a bad lover, she's not going to know any different. And so it, in essence, protects the man. It is a male-centered view of, the sexual experience. What is interesting about the word virgin is that all virgin means is a woman who is complete unto herself. It was never meant to mean sexually pure. We took it and spun it all of these types of ways. Interestingly enough, I just finished the Shadow book of Jungian shadow archetypes and theories and all this kind of stuff. And it was talking about the fact that in Christian scriptures, the figure of Jesus came to earth through the Virgin Mary. And this author was saying that it was not because we were talking about sexual purity. We just wanted a woman who was whole into herself. Because if we were going to have a perfect masculine, we needed a perfect feminine. And so I just loved it so much, because my entire world had been centered on the fact that, there hadn't even needed to be that nasty sex thing that Mary was just so virginal and pure. That had nothing to do with it. It is, I love this term virgin in its most beautiful origin, that it is a person who is whole into themselves. And that's awesome to me, because we all could be whole into ourselves. And I don't mean perfect or healed or all of those things, but you're enough. You're enough just on your own. So I also thought of that idea of codependency, and that if we have someone who has no other sexual experience, she is stuck with this man. But then, yes, flip it around to this idea of we want her to be a virgin, but then also sexually experienced. It is just wild. My clients who come to care out of purity culture and were virgins on their wedding night, either by choice or by supposed force, say it's so strange that all of a sudden they were supposed to flip some light switch and have this whole bevy of sexual skills.
Right. What the fuck is that?
Yeah. The amount of women who had blowjobs forced upon them in their honeymoon week and had never touched a penis, and then are having aggressive head-holding blowjobs seen in where? Porn, which we can move into, is horrifying. And y'all, blowjobs can be beautiful. Oral sex can be incredible. But it really makes me mad that they're trying to be, right, this male-centered sex performer. So it's weird. It's sad. Virginity with sexual experience, blah, blah, blah. Let's switch into porn. What role do you think porn plays in this trope?
A fantastical goal that is never going to be realized. I think it gives the wrong idea of what sex, quote unquote, should look like. And people, especially people who are not in social circles or a world where they feel that sex is a topic that can be spoken on and not taboo, I think that is the only input they have about sex, because there is no healthy representation of sex, because sex has always been bastardized. So to then have porn be the only input you have, that then makes you think, think about the porn that we typically see on Pornhub, right? Mm-hmm. This non-ethical porn. Mm-hmm. It is women who are young and who look childish almost. And it idealizes this trope of typically, this is typical, of course, but a woman who is virginal in the incorrect sense of the term, and is just taken and pleasured by the man's pleasure within that. And so I think it perpetuates a false idea of sexual activity that is unsafe and unconsensual at its core.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. Porn is so interesting. We say this all the time, but I feel like it should always be said. It is equivalent to the Fast and the Furious movies. And imagine a world in which we all learn to drive only by watching the Fast and the Furious movies. It would be scary. Mm-hmm. But we know as a culture that Fast and the Furious is entertainment, and that your behind the wheel instructor has a job. Your teacher in driver's ed has a job. Your parents have a job. You have a job in order to be a responsible driver. And it's so cool to me that as a culture, we have 100% come up with a safe way to prepare young people to be behind the wheel. Do they still make mistakes? Yes. Are they still like, 16 to 18? The percentage of people who get into accidents is like 90%.
It's high.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And of course, because they're new drivers, there's still going to be mistakes, but also you're not forever shamed for the accidents you had in your youth. You're not. It's expected that you're going to have a fender bender. It's expected that you're going to get a speeding ticket. Yeah. It's just, we know we have an example. Like, we could look at this concept of, there's a form of driving entertainment that we do not villainize, but we would never think that that's what our teenagers should have as their driver's ed.
And that's what it should look like, period.
No.
Right.
It's not. It's just, it's fascinating. I think porn has a space in the same way that I love the Fast and the Furious franchise because I love a good car chase. Mm-hmm. I do. That adrenaline rush. It's fun. It's interesting. It's engaging. Porn can be the same way. It 100% can. It is sexually relevant content, which can 100% arouse individuals and bring them into a sexier space. It could be used with couples. It could be used as inspiration, sure. But to say this is what the basis of sex is ludicrous. That is not. It is made to be entertainment. It could be sensual. It could be erotic for you. It could be joyous even for you, especially ethical porn. Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. I recommend it to couples all the time, especially if they have done the work to remove to have the platform be more than white, able-bodied, young-looking people, mm-hmm. and have expanded it to be all bodies, all ages, all races, all lengths of pubic hair, these are important things, all sizes of penises. The amount of people with penises that come to work with me and are very ashamed of the size of their penis because of porn. Mm-hmm. It's wild. So, I mean, to draw that into porn, to draw that into this question, it is very interesting too that most penis-centered porn makes it seem as though a woman is going to be orgasmic through thrusting penetration too, or through some crazy position on vacation. I might have already mentioned this on here, but when Trey and I go on our vacation to our space in the Dominican Republic, there's always, the TV in the room. And when you turn the TV on, it's on like the channel for the resort. But if you go backwards, one channel, porn.
Really?
All day long. If you go back to 2 channels, another station of porn. So there's 2 entire porn channels just always playing. So when we go, we can't wait to see what's going to be on these porn channels. And y'all, the way we sit there and dissect what is happening. There are occasionally great pieces, occasionally. Most of the time, we make a bet of how long in this incredibly awkward scene that we're watching, the woman's tits are going to be out and the man's penis is going to be in her mouth. Mm. Because apparently that's all anybody wants to see. Sometimes it's 30 seconds.
Oh my God.
There's this one in the woods that we see multiple times when we're there. I don't know why it replays all the time. It's freezing cold. And they pull this woman's tits out and then put her on her knees in the snow.
No.
So she's boobs out. And we're just like, she's freezing.
She has to be so cool.
Stuff. And we're always like, this is what's wrong with mainstream porn.
Yeah.
Nothing. Her tits aren't even like touched or kissed or anything. They're just pulled out.
Just there.
I'm always like, why we pulled them out and then they could not give them any praise or any adoration.
For the viewing pleasure.
For the viewing pleasure.
Yeah.
Breasts are beautiful.
They are.
But what a shame. Mm-hmm. Again, watch those breasts bounce. But then this aggressive blowjob in the freezing cold and the snow. She is kneeling in snow It is like they are actually in the snow. Her breath is like cold.
Oh my
Like it is
God.
cold.
Like this actress is out there.
Also, this poor guy, he was having to get hard in the freezing cold
imagine
too.
that.
Like, I don't like this for either
There's
of
a
them. We
lot
saw it
of-
multiple times.
Like ED medication in there.
Yeah, right. So, like, what a perfect example. Outdoor
Yeah.
sex can be totally fun, guys, but it also is also kind of a joke because it is very hard to get comfortable, especially if you have a vulva. And so just porn can 100% be fun, but porn can 100% focus on the pleasure of the person it was designed for, right? There's an audience.
Exactly.
And keep that in mind. Who is the audience of this porn that we're viewing? And again, I don't think it's the cause of this trope in itself, but I do think it is a contributor, a very large contributor, that some virginal, pure woman would spread her legs for you and then also satisfy you.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you talking about? Sexual skills are like any other skills. They must be practiced. It can be a joy. I tell clients all the time, if they chose to remain virgins until their wedding night, I could not celebrate them more. And now let's like get to work. I work, y'all. Hi, if you're out there and you and your partner waited until your wedding night to have penetrative intercourse and you want to work with someone on making your penetrative intercourse the best intercourse ever, I would love to work with you. There's no shame. That is a beautiful choice for lots of people. Great. There's actually research that shows your sex could be better, and I was sad to find it.
I was sad.
It was one of those, we had to in school find something that we had a bias and go in with the research with our confirmation bias. And I was very strongly disproven. No, there are a lot of people who feel very confident in their bodies. There was a lot of body confidence that came from having waited to have one sexual partner. And that's freaking awesome.
Let's transition that into our next question then,
Go.
right? We have a question about how to establish dating boundaries surrounding sex.
Oh, perfect.
How do you have that conversation about I want to date and I want to be like intimate in other ways, but not have sex? I have a friend who has this, not dilemma, but dilemma, I guess. I can't think of a better word. And she reached out to me to ask a very similar question. And I just had so much fun thinking about this because I think you can get so creative with intimacy. Intimacy is not just sex. It is so much more. I do think that there is a different type of intimacy when it comes to sex. And that's typically what they tell us in abstinence-only sex education is that once you have penetrative intercourse, that you have an attachment that cannot be undone, which is not true. I'm just going to debunk that. Now, you do release chemicals. Your brain releases certain types of chemicals with sex, but it happens with all sex, not just penetrative intercourse. It is just dopamine and oxytocin, and it's kind of universal. So, and that same oxytocin is still released when you give someone a massage that you love, when you wash their hair.
30-second hug.
Yes. So these are the things that I started telling my friend. The conversation, I think, kind of revolves around your values. I'll always send y'all back to our values worksheet. It is free on the website. Just go to shop and then free downloads. You'll find it there. Values are one of the most important things that you can do for yourself to find out how you want to have these conversations, because this conversation would look different for me than it will for you. Because why? I think that's the first question you need to ask yourself. Why do you not want to have sex? Because if you can't convey that message, I don't know if that conversation will be very effective. So I think it's really important that you get down to the nitty gritty of I think it's beautiful that you don't want to have sex. That's incredible for you. I think that can but I can see it being so incredible as someone who has had sex, then moving into a space where you decide for yourself to choose celibacy. I think that can be such a powerful decision. And I don't mean to discount anybody who maintains abstinence in that way. I just think there is such an incredible choice in celibacy. But I think you need to know why and what values make you lean towards that decision. And then I think the conversation is simply just conveying that that same thing. Convey why it is important to you. How does this further your goals and your interests? How does this align with the lifestyle that you lead? I think that is the conversation to have, not don't you dare touch me ever. I've just decided this, the end. I think it's really just a beautiful conversation that you can have with this person that you're like, I really like you. I really want to move forward, but this is what moving forward looks like to me. And that can be so cool.
Yes. Yes to everything Holland said. I love aligning it with values as well, because then it doesn't lead to what could become a shame spiral. If this other person doesn't know the why behind what they are truly providing for you by helping protect and respect your boundary. It could lead to the thing we see in purity culture all the time, which is attraction plus obstacle equals excitement, which also is a dropper of shame that's always kind of going in there. Also a little peppering of anxiety. Also a little guilt that we're just basting with.
Right.
And if we are not careful, we are going to make a perfect storm of a lot of other bullshit. So I love Holland's idea of bring it back to the value. Bring it back to an informed decision that you're making based upon the information that you have right now about yourself and about the others that you are interested in dating. I would do some why work. Why is this important to me right now? I would, find the values. Find what is it that when you involve yourself sexually with someone, it kind of puts you in an altered state. And so you're not able to make as like decisions that feel as grounded in yourself. That's super cool. That's super cool. Is it that, you tend to look the other way then when they treat servers poorly and they don't listen to your friends, or they start to make you codependent upon them? Do you find that when you're having sex with someone, you are meeting your needs for connection and other things that should be met by a plethora of people, right? Do you start to like obsess about this person and let go of your friendships and let go of your relationships with your community?
Your good habits.
Yes. And is that a reason why? Do you really want to avoid that altered state as much as you can? Well, then that's really yummy. It's amazing. And I really do think that it is fun to find partners that align with that value, who are also like, yeah, that actually sounds really great to me too. Then I would get really specific about what forms of intimacy you are interested in still being involved in. I would get interested, like, does holding hands still feel safe for you? Does cuddling, does feeling a partner's erection or not, right? Does making out with certain areas totally on the table, does, I don't know, grinding, really get specific about it.
Right.
Because,
draw a line.
Yeah, I don't. Also, I guess this would be a great time to talk about the tendency to renegotiate those boundaries when you're hot.
Yeah, no.
Don't do that.
No. I actually have implemented this before, where you kind of set a boundary. It's a fun boundary to be able to set, and it encourages fun conversation to say, if we're going to move past the pre-established boundary, we both need to be in an unaltered state of mind, and it needs to be a conversation. It's such a simple boundary to set, but it does encourage you to have conversations that are productive and not influenced.
Arousal's wild, y'all. I mean, it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. And the body in that state is going to want to forego a lot of other things. And yay, because it's what makes sex so juicy and wonderful and healing. But yeah, it's not a good time to renegotiate. It's not, because you do not deserve to feel guilt and shame. Sex is good. Pleasure is good. And the chasing of pleasure is good. Yes. And so I would just strongly encourage the avoidance of finding yourself in situations that are going to lead you to feel guilt and shame about sex, because that's not doing anybody any favors.
I do think that something fun, there are quite a few fun things you can implement instead of sexual intimacy. Some other ways you can implement intimacy into your relationship could be things like washing each other's hair. Like lay down on the kitchen counter and put your head in the sink, because then you're removing nakedness as well. You can give each other massages, with clothes, without clothes, whatever works best for you. You could, let's see, braid each other's hair. What do you have? 30-second hugs are a great thing to do as well. The 3-minute game could be really fun, non-sexual.
That's what I was about to say, is that we have a non-sexual 3-minute game download, and we could provide that on this one, because it's exactly what I was going to get to, is that we have conflated touch and sex in this culture.
Yes.
So what I don't want you to do is rob yourself of touch.
Just devoid. Right.
No one.
Because it's a human need.
It is a human need, and that's ridiculous. You deserve to have touch. It is a beautiful way for all people to get curious about what other types of touch they enjoy. And we just talked about this on the partnership podcast, but I am finding more and more that my precious, good, masculine clients have never asked themselves what other forms of touch they enjoy. And so we play 3-minute game in session or something like that, or if a son did it at home and they don't know what to ask for. Everybody gets to think of crazy things. And something like 3-minute game is just so fun to go, what would feel nice? Would it feel nice if someone like marched their fingers up my arm? Like, that's fun. I don't know. Play with that. Allow yourself to experience sensation and pay attention to the experience of sensation on your body. That is a joy. That is a human need. And yeah, so really think about how touch could be valuable in your dating experiences. Maybe not sex, but what could touch do? And what forms of touch do you need? And what types of forms of touch do you love to provide? And how could you both get curious there? Yeah, take off sex for all of the reasons we've already listed, and make sure that you're not robbing yourself of touch. Because that's going to be interesting if you do eventually desire to have a sexual partnership.
Right.
If you don't know how this person touches at all. Don't only think with your head. Like, your body's good. Your body's really good.
Yes.
And it's gonna gather intel when you hold a person's hand.
Right.
It is gonna gather intel when you cuddle on the couch while you're watching a movie. And so if you rob yourself of all touch, you also might rob yourself of some important information. Yeah. Yeah, 3-minute game would be awesome.
The next question we have is about tips to orgasm while on certain medications. Antidepressants are well known for harming libido. So is, though, hormonal birth control. And a myriad of other medications. So what are some ways that we can encourage people to embrace their new libido? Because I don't think there's anything wrong with your body. If you are helping yourself with these medications, there's nothing wrong with you. Don't get misinformed about that. But how can we assist you in learning this new body and learning this new libido?
This is one of my favorite questions. And I talk with friends about this. I talk with clients about this. Yes and amen to everything Holland said. Medication saved my life. So I'm going to be really clear about that. And yes, there are often times when we have something that inhibits prior easier access we had to orgasm. So in school, we had to take sex and psych classes. And I will say that Wellbutrin, if we're talking SSRI, is the one that is really has the least amount of side effects for sexual functioning. Now, I will say that I have had a lot of clients and individuals on it, and they just didn't like it. They didn't like how it made their bodies feel. So that's what we run into, right? Is this idea of I can either be happy or I can have orgasms. I had a friend psychiatrist actually say that to her. That's not true. You get to be both. You get to have both. And you might have to use some new tips and tricks. So the things that I'm going to kind of launch into could be helpful. And then if it's not, again, always feel free to go to sexedforyou.com/free consult. And I would love to help you overcome this obstacle. And we can talk about that. So what I always recommend first is engaging the erotic imagination. If you are not a reader of smut, romance novels, erotic literature, whatever you want to call it, now is your time. What I like to say is, okay, so if Lexapro, which is the drug that I used, kept me from my highest highs and lowest lows, which thank God, because I was in a horrible season where I couldn't get off the kitchen floor. it kept me from those bottoms and super mountain highs. It did not keep me from getting aroused by sexy content. Not at all. Sometimes the burn was slower. So what I tell clients to do is start practicing. Really start practicing. It's like weightlifting, so that when the moment comes when you're in a solo sexual practice or a partnered sexual practice, you have some reps to call upon, and you have sexual content already in your mind.
Right.
So what I encourage clients to do is, yes, find an erotic literature story, or yes, watch some female-centered porn, honestly. Or a show like Outlander, or a show that like just really Bridgerton, that gets you going. Then when you're in a moment, start to call back on those memories of the sexual content and almost use the reps that you have to help you bring your body into a more aroused state. That kind of numbness feeling around the edge that a antidepressant or an anti-anxiety med can give is odd sometimes. I so get it. So use things to help you. Use things to heighten it. And I don't mean more substance. That's also, I would discourage from incorporating alcohol and drugs into your solo sex practice and your partnered sexual practices, because those are going to be more dampers.
Right.
And if you're on a med that is helping you in other ways, you don't need those when you're wanting pleasure. So I would take those off. I would put yourself in your body. I would do a lot of touching of your body. And remember that the average person with a vulva and clitoris takes 20 to 40 minutes anyway. So if you are in the 40 minutes to an hour space, fine. Like, literally just don't feel bad about it.
Right.
And I would also find this time to introduce new toys if you wanted, because that's another way to bring something else online. Maybe before there was a great sensitivity to this thing, but maybe now it's a really great time to try a wand that inserts, or a new clitoral toy. There are things that we could do when coupled together could still help us in that way. But I just think it's an amazing time to use the erotic imagination. And I was literally talking to somebody about this just the other day. And we want to heighten something. So erotic imagination, but then also remember that research shows that the best sexual encounters usually had a time component. Either all the time in the world, like, oh, we're on vacation, they have nowhere to be, or we were in a closet and we had to go really quickly, or he had to leave the next day and I just couldn't get enough of him because I knew I was never going to see him again.
Right.
Find what you love best, which again, erotic material could help with this. Then start to pretend that either you have all the time in the world or this person has to go really soon. And then third thing, and then I want to hear from Holland, is change up the location. So many of us have a certain way that we have been either practicing sex solo or engaging in partnered sexual encounters, usually in a bed, usually laying the same way or stroking ourselves the same way. It is just the same. Mix it up. Have some beautiful time in the shower. We talked about a sensory shower the other day, like totally dark and all of this type of stuff. Funny side note, when I was in New York, the bathroom light is on a sensor.
Oh, no.
And so it went pitch black in the middle of a shower
while
I was shaving my legs.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, sensory shower. Except, no, I don't want a sensory shower.
I'm going to cut myself on accident.
I have a very sharp blade. It's just funny because I was like, Holland would call this a sensory shower. It is great. Not when you're trying to shave. So I was like waving my hands frantically in the shower. Turn back on.
Dancing.
Yes, it happened. It was great. But change it up.
Yeah.
Go to the living room. If you move your body, stand, squat, do something else.
Right.
Play. I was going to say play with yourself, but yes, play with yourself. But play while you're playing with yourself of, how could I change this up? Because I think the thing we get frustrated is it always used to work this way.
Right.
And it's no longer working this way. Okay, great. But now you're taking a med that is also helping you live your life or helping this or that. Switch it up. But
allow yourself to change. Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. And then I would add just a few tiny things.
Go for it.
I think playing with mirrors can be really fun, and it can really encourage you to be embodied and in the moment. Playing with time is always really fun. You could maybe have the door open, make it risque. Like, I mean,
Yes.
be smart about it, but obviously just let yourself play in areas that feel titillating to you. And then let's see, what was it? Try the shower. Try the shower. There are so many waterproof toys, and there are so many shower heads. If you are a person with a vulva, there are so many lovely shower heads in this world. They're $15 on Amazon. And if you have never tried that before, or if that is not something that you currently have access to, I think that could make a ginormous difference in your solo pleasure play or together. Partnered showers can be so fun. So
fun.
All of those tiny little tips and tricks are what I have for y'all.
I love those. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with anyone. I hear you in the frustration to achieve orgasm. And then I also want you to take the goal of orgasm off. We are all entitled to pleasure, and we're all entitled to orgasm. But the pressure to orgasm gets in the way of us all so often. I loved the time. I thought you were going to say set a timer, and I was going to say, set a timer. Because A, it adds a time component. But B, if the timer goes off, guess what you can do? You can just ignore it and snooze it. Or you can keep going. If you weren't yet to that time, it's just a good idea. It's just a fun idea. It could mix something up. Also, baths are so good. Like, date yourself.
Yep.
Right? The amount of clients I find who literally masturbate the same way that they have masturbated since they were in middle school. Guys, we're grown-ups now. You can do anything, and your body is yours to discover. And this is a perfect time to begin to rediscover your body. When I was on Lexapro, orgasms took a lot longer, and yet I learned my body in ways that I never had. And I'll just always be really thankful for that time because I learned foreplay with myself. I learned all of the different ways that I love to create an atmosphere for myself. I would light candles. I'd put on music that I loved. I'd wear a silky robe. I would massage from my toes all the way up to my arms. I would just have this luscious, erotic time with myself. That's on Lexapro, y'all, is when I gave myself this orgasm, all Michaela Bellum's work, that was just breath. I'm still like, how did I do this? And rocking my pelvis and inhaling and imagining moving my pelvic floor up to like my cervix and then imagining this D circle. But I spent, I think, 30 minutes doing this. It was insane. It was so single. And so you would have thought this is the saddest time of my life. Nope. I did this to myself. Rocked, breathed for 30 minutes. I can still do it. Like I can bring a Kegel up and like think about my cervix and then slowly let it go. Did it for long enough that I gave myself an orgasm that would not stop. And it was literally because of breath. I had 7 giant orgasms. So that by the end, I just wanted it to stop.
You're like,
like I can't take anymore on Lexapro.
Yeah. It's possible.
It's so possible.
Your body has changed. Medication is changing your whole body, and that is okay. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong.
No.
It is literally just different. And I think your first step into achieving orgasm again is changing your mindset. You are not incorrect. You are not broken. You just need to let yourself get creative.
And it's always okay to talk to your doctor if you truly feel this is affecting your libido.
Right.
Never feel ashamed to speak to your psychiatrist or your MD that just prescribed this and say, this is affecting my libido and sex is important to me. So many women are silenced about this.
Right.
You are free to try different antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds until you find one that you feel like still allows you to experience these things. And if you feel like this is working in every other way, please try some of these things that we've all talked about first. And then if none of this is working, speak to your doctor about it. Lots of my clients have, and that's okay. You get to. This idea that women's pleasure doesn't matter is bogus. Do you know how many men would go running if all of a sudden, this makes me angry.
If they couldn't get hard. Yeah.
On a drug? We would ban that drug.
We would ban the drug.
It just wouldn't even be on the market.
What? How did we do this?
What?
We've made a fatal flaw.
So advocate for yourselves and try all these things. And of course, reach out to us if you have, if you want to talk about this more. This can be a very individualistic thing. Last bit is that some people find once they're on antidepressants that they are no longer with a partner who is good to them. And they weren't ever able to realize it before. And I forgot until this moment to mention that. Mm-hmm. That is another clarifying thing that being on drugs high can do, is make you realize, whoa, I have some huge stuff I need to work on. Mm-hmm. And one of that is removing myself out of this partnership.
Yeah.
So also, give grace to yourself.
Yes.
If you're realizing that it's not you at all who's broken, it's this relationship that you're in and you need to get out. Mm-hmm. That's actually a beautiful realization to come to. And maybe it's not you, maybe it's them, and maybe it's the sex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Birth control can do that too. Yes. A lot of medications can do that. But anything that's affecting your hormones is deeply going to affect your relationships. Mm-hmm. So just be mindful that you may feel crazy, but it might be your intuition screaming at you because it's been screaming at you, but you weren't able to hear it. Yes. And whatever change you have made may have allowed that voice to finally speak itself true in your mind and in your gut. And that is something to be valued.
And this is why also, y'all, when we talk on these things, right, these are very broad strokes, and why my work with individuals and partnerships and stuff is so important, because individually there are different care approaches that need to be given to every single one of these stories. So you might have heard bits and pieces of you in all of this, and that's good. It's because all of us are so different. Mm-hmm. And it's why please never take any of this as like sweeping advice on what to do. Please hear bits and pieces and take what you like and leave the rest, because this is not this is what everybody should do.
No, this could not all apply to one person. No. Everything we have said has touched on 16 different individual people, and that's just how the podcast works.
It is.
But if you would like individualized education and coaching, you can reach out to us at sexedforyou.com/free consult.
Let's talk about this final question.
Let's do it.
Okay, you read it.
How do you get good at sex? That's the question. How do you become good at sex? And how do you take sexual excitement and turn it into action, sexual action? What advice can we give in this very broad question?
We'll repeat a phrase I used earlier, which is sexual skills are like any other skills. They must be practiced. Mm-hmm. Adrienne Marie Brown says it. That was a Betty Dodson quote that I just gave. Esther Perel says this. Sexual skills take time and take practice. So to get good at sex, one has to start practicing. And I loved Helen's question of how do we take that like desire to become a good student and practicer, but how do we take it from theory to practice? And oh my God, that's hard. That leap is hard. That movement towards is hard, especially if we're trying to do it conscientiously. Because I think what we see in the movies and what we see in pornography and what we see in other spaces is this effortless move, right? Yes. It is almost like we skip everything. We skip the communication. We skip all the good stuff. And yeah, interestingly enough, I was with Trey and a friend of ours from who we had met at the Wheel of Consent workshop. And so we were talking about a lot of this too, about touch, about games, about all these types of things. I do think the 3-minute game is a really good way to move in. I do. I know it's kind of, people are rolling their eyes like, of course, Lauren thinks 3-minute games are a great way. But because I do think it's a fun way, it can get more risky. You could start with something very safe, very non-sexual of, how do you want to be touched for 3 minutes? Somebody could ask for a shoulder massage. Because this is what's important, is to be in wanting.
Right.
So to move from theory to practice, we need to make sure that partners are centering their wants, and that when they are serving, they're also very willing. And so I think the 3-minute game is a great time to start practice all of the different ways to give gifts and receive gifts. So 3-minute game question number 1 is, how do you want to be touched for 3 minutes? And then the second question is, how do you want to touch me for 3 minutes? And that could be great because it gets the other person comfortable enough to say, will you do this? And then it gets the other person comfortable to say, may I do this? But then you can start to take out that precursor question And then you could just start to play with, will you do this? And may I do this? And it can go back and forth. And there's ways where it's just, you don't have to do a taking and a serving and a taking and a serving. You could just, whoever wants to voice a want, you could set a timer and just be like, okay, it's your turn to want. And then it's the other person's turn to want.
Right.
And then it's your turn to want. And then it's the other person's turn to want. And the other person is just getting to decide if they're interested in giving that gift.
Oh, that's
right?
exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. So you take out a lot of the other stuff and you get it shorter and shorter, because by this point, both parties are getting and wanting, right? I want to go down on you, may I? Right? For my pleasure. Yeah. Or no, I don't feel good with that yet. Yeah. Will you, like make out with me and move yourself and fondle my breasts at the same time, right? What's really fun is then you can, inside of that time boundness, be like, oh, that was feeling good or no. Then there could be a neat thing where then it's like, forget the timer, right? And that would be neat, because that means that both parties are feeling in their wanting enough that the communication is going well enough. I love a game. I love a game.
The 3-minute game is such a well-made game.
It
really is so helpful with encouraging sexual communication, not just sexual communication, but in this particular instance, because that is such a vital component of good sex. That is what we will come back to time and time again. How do you have good sex? You communicate. That's going to be our first answer. There are things like the 3-minute game and skills that we can tell you that are going to be helpful to hone. Yes. But at its core, sex is about communication.
Yes.
And this game really helps you become comfortable with asking, because again, we've put such a taboo on sex. We don't want to say these words. It feels almost icky to say out loud, I want you to go down on me. It's like something you feel like you should whisper and like feel demure about, especially as a woman.
Yes.
And then this game encourages you not just to ask yourself what you want, but to own it and to embody it and then allow it, because it is equally as difficult to receive pleasure as it is to give it. And it is so important to let yourself really be in that moment. And that's what the timer component gives you in this game, is that it's only 3 minutes or it's 5 minutes, whatever you want your timer to be. And then you get to just sit there and luxuriate in the moment without thinking about, oh, he's been going down on me for so long. Like, what if he's bored? What if his tongue hurts? What if this. It's only 3 minutes. Let yourself luxuriate in it and learn to relax into the pleasure and relax into giving and willingness and taking. And it can just be so beautiful.
A thing I have implemented when I play since training is a reflection time, a 1-minute share by the person giving the gift and the person receiving a gift after any section. So like if you played the first 2 rounds, ouch. My foot fell asleep. If you played, how do you want it to be touched for 3 minutes? And the person, you did that whole round with both parties. Then doing a 1-minute share of how did it feel to be accepting the gift that I was giving you through your shoulder massage? And how did it feel to be giving the gift of your foot massage? It is interesting. And you learn a lot in that. I noticed when I played recently that I was having a really hard time staying in the thing that I had asked for, because once it was happening, I didn't actually like it. But then I felt bad. And then I felt like, well, I was going to lose the rest of my time. I tried to I asked for different pressures. I asked for different stuff. And at the end of the day, I just didn't really like the thing I had asked for. That said a lot, because then I got to talk through that and hear said back to me, well, we could have stopped and started a whole new thing. Because what did I slip into and doing or during and tolerating? Because I didn't think that I could stop. It literally makes me teary. The lessons we can learn in this exercise are invaluable. And when you do the share, I encourage it to be listening turn style, which is you don't interrupt the other person. Set a timer. You talk for a minute. Great. You give some feedback. The other person gets the same turn to say what they've found out about themselves, how hard it was to sit in receiving. Did they end up enduring and tolerating? Were they afraid to ask for different pressure? It's really cool data. Yeah, it's really fascinating. I highly encourage little question asking. It doesn't need to happen forever, y'all. If it moves into just desire and want, then just go towards the sexual experience.
Yeah.
Great. The other thing I did think of, and we don't talk about it often here because I often prefer 3-minute game to this, but Sensate Focus is Masters and Johnson's OG sex therapy tool. And this is how it goes. A person lays on their belly completely naked. And you could do this with a partner. You could have your underwear on. You could have clothes on, sure. But nakedness is important here. And one partner is exploring the body of the person face down for 15 minutes is what Masters and Johnson's do. And they are purely exploring their head, back, buttocks, and feet for their enjoyment. Touch, like curiosity. Ooh, look how their right shoulder blade does this, right? Enjoying the different touch, enjoying the feels of their skin, enjoying their hair, enjoying their legs, all this type of stuff. It's for them. It's for them. Then switch. Then there's also a sharing after that. What are 3 things that you noticed that you really liked about being touched and 3 things you really liked about touching? So that's all. Then you can flip over onto your back and you can do the front side of your body. Same thing. It is the partner exploring all for their joy and the other person's just allowing. You can give boundaries of any way you want to.
Of course.
Prior to, right? You could say, actually, no breasts and vulva. You could say, actually, it's all wide open. You could say, around this area, I only want you to touch like this. Mm-hmm. But it kind of just makes the body like the canvas, and the person touching gets to like paint all over the canvas and discover it. And it's a really neat exercise. Masters and Johnson's really encourages you to pay attention to anytime you want to giggle, which when I have assigned this exercise, I do it often with my clients who come into marriage as virgins, ironically, because there's such a nervousness. And so the tendency can be to turn it into a giggle fest. And it's not that that's inherently wrong at all. Sex can totally be goofy. It is that we want to allow the sensations to move in us and through us. And we want to drop down into what feels good. Laughter can be a nervousness that takes us out, making jokes. People talk about that in therapy all the time, right? Like trying to make their therapist laugh. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Lots of people do it. But yeah, Sensate Focus, you could Google it, or again, you can reach out to me and I would love to work you through exactly how that looks. It's a really, really good tool. And it can feel good. It really can feel good. And your only job is to lay there and notice what feels good in your body, and to sit there and do to the body what you're in wanting for. But it's amazing how aroused the body can become after 30 minutes of being touched like that. And then when the body's been laid bare like that, it's really beautiful.
Such vulnerability.
It is.
I think it's interesting too especially how you said that you do this often with people who came into marriages as virgins, that this goes back to what we started with at the beginning, the 3 Ps, the patriarchy, the porn, and possession. That
it's the 3 Ps.
It's the 3, casually.
It's the 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps, that we see sex often as the only option for intimacy. And especially in those kind of spaces, we see sex as rushed and frantic, I think. And this really encourages us to be present with your body and with your intimacy and with someone else's body. And that can be so deeply uncomfortable. And to do this is to really encourage active vulnerability. You are choosing to allow this. And that is a hard choice when sex and bodies and nakedness have been so sinful for your whole life. To actively choose this is to actively choose vulnerability in a way that can feel wrong and yet is not.
One of the last things I was going to mention too is, we kind of hinted at this, but I was thinking about porn as a way, like ethical porn, and some people are going to be comfortable with that, some are not. So please hear me, guys. Again, this goes back to these are things, take them or leave them. But then OMGS is such a good site. And I use it with clients all the time. And every time I'm blown away. The thing I think that is so powerful about OMGS for people with vulvas is these vignettes that are shared on this platform. Some of them are very sexual, and you're getting to see a person with a vulva explore their own vulva. But some of them are just women just sharing how they found this thing. And I think it literally breaks apart. It crumbles these ideas that we have that people are just born good at sex. These women are sharing hilarious stories of how they found out that they liked fill in the blank, about how many years they suffered through shitty penetrative intercourse until they found out that they like this thing. And they've all come up with little names. A client recently was like, oh, so this is called fill in the blank. I was like, no, honey, this is what OMG Yes found was enough women kind of reference these things similarly enough that they were able to categorize them into shallowing, which is just using the first third of the vagina, right? Or they have all of orbiting, all of these different things that, sure, we could say they're not clinical names, though. They're just a term.
Yeah.
You could make up your own terms too. That's also fun. Like, oh, I really like fill in the blank. Trey and I were laughing about positions the other day, right? The amount of crazy positions people call things. And I'm like, it's fine. Okay. Yes. You don't get good at sex by becoming good at lots of positions.
Right.
Let's demystify. Okay. You don't get good at sex by being able to do the entire Kama Sutra. That you don't get good at sex by sacrificing your own needs for somebody else. You don't get good at sex by becoming the best blowjob giver in the world. Sure, you can learn to truly enjoy giving oral pleasure to a penis or to a vulva. 100%. I think that can be an amazing thing. But the thing that makes lovers the best lovers is their desire for whatever they're doing, is them being in their wanting, which is them following their curiosity, which is them having a safe enough space to be curious in. You're not going to get great at oral sex if you feel pressured to be great at oral sex. I want people to have play partners where it feels safe to mess up. You feel like you could communicate if you don't like something. You feel like you could say, oh, yes, like stay there. That's great. Or can you do this angle again without getting told like, oh, my God, you're so bossy. We need sex partners who are comfortable with vibration, right? To bring a vibrator in. We get good at sex by being great listeners, by being great explorers, by being adventurous, by being curious, by being safe for other people. Playfulness and receptivity, being receptive to coaching, being receptive to, yes, I did like that yesterday or last week, but I don't like it now. I mean, a menstruating body is a fascinating thing to have sex with.
Yes. Week to week.
Week to week. My body wants different things. And that's nobody's fault.
No.
That is how I'm designed. And I think, yeah, it's a skill like any other skill. But you're right. That hump, especially if you're doing it consensually, is really hard. I think setting apart time and space for it and then starting with something silly like a 3-minute game, especially if you're trying to observe and protect somebody's limit or boundary.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it has got to start a little dorkily and that's okay.
I think we should give merit to the fact that there is such discomfort in bodies that have been told and taught and indoctrinated and really believe that sex can be so sinful and that intimacy can be wrong. I think there is such a taboo we have, especially in America, just about bodies and nakedness and vulnerability in this way, that can create a mental barrier towards sex. And even if you're actively and consensually engaging in sex, if that barrier is still present, sex will always feel scary. And so that is something to tackle. And that is a your work, my work, that is a your work type of thing to do that you kind of, a person has to do on their own to allow, because you can't be good at sex if you're afraid of it. So there is such a merit to the work that must be mentally and psychologically tackled before any of these things are going to feel even feasible. You know, like it's going to be terrifying to think of playing a game to ask for touch when touch has been demonized your whole life. So allow self grace for one, and then work.
2 things that came to mind during your brilliance. 1, Reverend Beverly Dale, my favorite, has a new book out.
That's exciting.
Called Who Told You You Were Naked? And it's available wherever you get your books. But I just got it on Kindle and I've started reading it. And if you were conditioned and brought up in the world that, there was something inherently sinful about your body, about the act of sexual intimacy, I would highly encourage this book. I've always been recommending Advancing Sexual Health for the Christian Client, but that's really more geared towards people in my shoes, in Holland's shoes, a practitioner standpoint. And I still recommend it for nerds. Shout out to my clients who have purchased this book. They will tell you the same thing. It is a incredible, if you are a nerd and you need to understand theology, still get Advancing Sexual Health for the Christian Client because you will love it. But Who Told You You Were Naked is the perfect accompaniment. If you want a read, it's good. That's number 1. Number 2, you said something really fascinating about, if you were conditioned to feel that there was shame and sin around this thing, sometimes what we can do, and this is what we found with long-term research when we studied those who were only given abstinence only until marriage education, is that those young people were still engaging in sexual acts.
Yes.
They were just doing so without safety. What I will find with folks who are conditioned with shame around their bodies and the bodies of others is that they will still actually eventually have sex. They'll just do it under the presence of hyperarousal.
Yep.
So they will get caught up in a moment, right? They'll have said yes to their one thing, and that leads to another, and that leads to another. And then before you know it, they're renegotiating while hot, and then having a moment that's sexual that they then regret and heaping guilt and shame. That's not okay. And you're exactly right. It is not your job to do or anybody else's job to do who's in a dating experience. If someone still has need to destigmatize some of their beliefs. Because what will work? State of arousal, because it dampens everything.
Yeah.
What will work? Substance, because it dampens everything. We are never at Sex Ed for You going to advocate for that. Never. You need to do the values-based work first, because no one should ever be made to feel that they coerced you into that either. Because arousal's crazy, y'all. And it's the best, because I tell clients all the time who experience some form of chronic pain or who are having bad menstrual cramps or a migraine, sex can be really good for it. And it's really wild to watch the dampening effect that arousal can have, but it will have that same dampening effect on your boundaries. And I do not want anyone experiencing that after guilt and shame, because that has more to do with the work at the basis. And so I found it interesting that we were talking about all these ways to go into sex, but what we were talking about is from an ethical framework.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who would be like, that's not how to get into sex. You start out doing this, you start out doing that. And that is a way to hijack the nervous system, for sure. And we could say how to have good sex. Step 1, start kissing. Step 2, start doing this. But I have clients all the time who are like, I don't actually get aroused by just kissing. Right? I want you to titillate my brain first. There's a lot of ways to have sex and get good at sex. And a lot of people are just overriding their nervous systems.
Yep.
And that don't align with us. So sorry, you guys all might have been like, this is a weird podcast, but I forget sometimes that we're never going to give our audience education on how to get rich quick.
Right.
Get fucked quick. It's not going to happen here. Because I don't know. No.
Sex that's not long term.
No.
That's not a true fix. That's like putting a Band-Aid on a damn bullet hole. If you have work to do, you have work to do.
And there's no shame in that.
No, it's beautiful and it's so fun. Trust me, I did it.
Yes.
It's fun and it's beautiful and it's the hardest thing you will ever do. And it is the most rewarding thing I have ever done. And it is worth it. But it is your work to do. So we're not going to tell you, step 1, do this, step 2, do that, because that might not work for you. And it sure as fuck is not going to work long term. But what will work is learning yourself. What will work is finding your values and aligning your sexual life with your values. What will work is understanding yourself and understanding your partner, understanding what you want out of life. these are the things that we encourage at Sex Ed for You. We do not encourage Band-Aids for bullet holes. That's not who we are.
No. Taylor Swift said it best. No. Sex can feel really good. Sexual intimacy can feel really good. And no one has sex all day, every day. Even the professionals that don't, they have lives. And what we do see about professionals, ironically, is that, it's able to be such an integrated part of their lives. I want always the sexual encounters that listeners to this podcast experience to add value to their lives. I don't care what kind of value, but you better believe that it is not going to be bringing value until you know your own values. And because then you could have more and more and more sex and crave more and more and more sexual intimacy because you know the goodness of it. Dr. Reverend Beverly Dale, speaking of, has a 7-video series on YouTube. We can link it below, called Sex is Good. But she just goes all into how much God loves sex. They are the oldest. They look like they were originally recorded on VHS.
Incredible.
They are so good. She is brilliant. And I actually thought maybe we could watch them. We could do the next set of podcasts. They're fabulous. And I was like, we need to make something like this because they're so good. And I thought we should do a podcast response to these videos. So maybe that can actually be the next podcast that we do, guys, because they're so good. But there's information out there. So if you are feeling that pull of like, this doesn't align with me, don't do it until you do feel like something aligns with you. Then B, start to do your research. On our values worksheets that we give clients when they first start work with us, there's a question of, have you ever changed your values? And I love it because clients will share with me often times where their values felt uncomfortable and no longer aligned with the life that they were interested in leading. That's normal. That's growth. There is nothing shameful about that. Our culture worships longevity in a way that is very odd, and we have very few rites of passage. But there are many times in life where our values shift and change. I remember times where they were no longer as inclusive as I wanted mine to be, and so I needed to shift there. I was a virgin on my wedding night, y'all, and we see where that got me. But then when I was divorced, I was like, well, what now? Am I a whore? Right? Like, I don't know who I am anymore. That was the time my values changed. They continue to shift and change, as they should. But that's each of our individual work to do. And like you said so brilliantly, like, that's good. It's good work. It is. Feels like a good endpoint. What do you think? Yeah. This has been a long podcast. Maybe it's 2. I don't know. Holland could do that back end. But thanks for coming to this episode of Sex Ed for You, where research meets reality. If you feel very, seen in this podcast, you can go to sexedforyou.com/free consult. If you want to start some individual work of your own, I would love to chat with you. You can request a consult there. Holland will review the form. If it sounds like we're a good fit, she'll approve your request. We'll chat for 15 minutes. I'll tell you about how I work with clients. We'll talk about money because I think it's only awkward if you don't talk about it. You can explain what you're looking for and we'll see if we're a good fit. If not, I'll refer you out to a colleague. No big deal. And where can they find us?
They can find us on Instagram at sex_ed_for_you. You can email me at admin@sexedforyou.com. You can find us on Facebook. It's Sex Ed for You, but the E in sex is a 3. And then our website is sexedforyou.com.
Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share, all those good things. Spotify, God bless them, keeps changing things up. So anything you want to give is nice.
It's great.
It's really nice.
Comment on these videos. That's incredible too.
Yep. YouTube is interesting. They're about to crack down on a lot of new stuff too. So the more feedback you can give on these posts, the best. Yeah. So people see that this is valuable sexuality education and coaching content, not the stuff that they're trying to get off to protect children, which is fine. Yeah. But it makes it hard to be an educator.
It does.
Yeah. Have a great day, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.